In the winter of 1984, we were introduced to a young boy with wild hair and a wilder heart, and his many adventures in a world full of magic, martial arts, and whimsy. Writer and artist Akira Toriyama took inspiration from classic kung fu cinema and the 16th century fantasy novel Journey to the West to create Dragon Ball, a manga in which Goku and his friends quest after the eponymous mythical orbs in stories that were equal parts humor and adventure. Fast forward about 5 years and the hot damn party began. Fantasy? Hell nah. How about long lost brothers from sci-fi deep space empires? Comedy? Sorry, fresh out. Try these multiple transformations instead. Adventures? Fighting, fighting, fighting! This was Dragon Ball Z, and it knocked its competition the hell out, becoming a worldwide phenomenon. DBZ got so popular that it essentially became synonymous with anime and big hair and screaming. And anything that popular needs video games based off of it. Lots of video games. Like a boatload over the years, spanning all kinds of genres and qualities. Scores of developers have tried to digitally recreate the melodrama and testosterone that were this series' calling card. Tried and failed. But then, in 2018, the keys to the kingdom were handed to a company that lives and breathes fighting games. Sporting a high production budget, damn near parity with the anime's visuals and a sharper gameplay design than any of its predecessors, this game was poised to be the one that fans have been waiting for. This was the one with the fighting system deep enough to be worthy of the fightingest anime of all time. But while this might be the greatest Dragon Ball game ever made, the process of completing it, unfortunately, mirrors the experience of actually watching the show for an extended period of time. What starts off as novel and engaging quickly stagnates into perpetual, agonizing tedium. Power up and clench your butts, folks. We're completing Dragon Ball FighterZ, or Dragon Ball FighterZ, whatever's the right one.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. As a reminder, this week is Indie Land Week. We have opening ceremonies November 6th, we have the midweek stream on November 8th, and then Friday through Sunday, which is November 11th through the 13th. You can watch the stream, and hey, the nice thing is the actual stream itself is going to be multicasted here on YouTube and Twitch on November 11th to the 13th. So hey, just come on by. We're raising money for a good cause, playing a lot of indie games. I guarantee you it's going to be a blast. Man, oh man, have I been trying to complete this one for a long time. Dragon Ball FighterZ has been out for almost 5 years now, and it's actually been on my radar for most of its life. I have been steadily watching this game grow as it's been updated via DLC characters and extra content since launch, which is a good thing. More content for a dope game is always great. But I didn't want to commit to creating an episode dedicated to this game until I knew for sure that it was done being updated, but they just wouldn't stop releasing characters. I thought they were done supporting this title at least 3 separate times over the last almost 5 years, and every single time, I was wrong. So, at a certain point, I just gave in and slowly just started the completion process. And honestly, I'm really glad that I did eventually start, because this game needed a lot of time put into it. One might not think that it'd be a problem for completionists, but that's the exact same trap I fell into, and I'm still not entirely sure that it's actually complete. For all I know, they're gonna release more stuff in the next couple of weeks to months to years. Goku. See this? This is exactly what I'm talking about. There it is. Let's begin before they release a new DLC pack. Stop.
Yes! All glory goes to the winner.
If ever there was an anime franchise that was tailor-made for fighting games, it's Dragon Ball. The series boasts some of the most iconic rivalries and battles in anime history, like Goku versus Frieza, or Yamcha versus his reputation. These legendary bouts have been recreated in digital arenas for decades, with mixed results. From this 1993 arcade release in which the characters move like they're swimming through molasses, to the manic MS Paint brawls in DBZ Legends, to the glorified fighting sim known as the Budokai Tenkaichi series. DBZ has been around the block more than once, but very few of the many Dragon Ball fighters managed to scratch the itches that belonged to fans of more traditional fighting games. Those who craved the depth, polish, and genuine attempts at balance of something like a Street Fighter from their DBZ games were SOL. That was until a few years ago in 2018 when the stars aligned and the great people at Arc System Works entered the picture. Oh, you don't know them? What a shame. These guys blessed us with Guilty Gear, BlazBlue, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, and DNF Duel. They stay making fighting games, and the results are somehow pretty damn great all the time. FighterZ is no exception, going back to fighting games' roots and embracing that sweet 2D plane. And if you enjoy degenerate scumbaggery in your fighting games, you'll be happy to know that Dragon Ball FighterZ is clearly a spiritual descendant of the Marvel vs. Capcom franchise, with its 3v3 fighting system, multiple assists, and long-ass oppressive block strings. Make love to that goddamn block button, baby. Every character's signature techniques are present and accounted for, whether they're relegated to specials or powerful super moves, with even the most obscure of animation references painstakingly recreated in these moves. Each fighter feels like a living, breathing love letter to the original mangas and animes. You've got your light and medium attack buttons, a special utility button, as well as a heavy button that usually either sends the opponent flying into the sky for an extended combo, off of the wall for an extended combo, or back down to the ground where they eat yet another combo. Dragon Ball FighterZ boasts a simple one-button press combo option for those who just want to jump straight into the action, as well as a truly deep and rewarding combat system for those who are willing to put in that time. But regardless of how one chooses to play, players must carefully manage their positions and resources in order to gain an advantage over their opponents, because one false move can mean a dead character or worse. Or you could say, playing footsies and mash super dash. That works too all the time. This game truly has it all, including a surprising amount of single-player focused content for those who just aren't in competitive stuff. Nah, I'm just messing with you. I feel you, dude. I feel you. At its core, Dragon Ball FighterZ is fantastic. Its meticulous gameplay design allows for fights that are both engaging to participate in and exciting to watch. Diving into just about any of its modes and messing around for a bit is bound to be a great time. You can take a look at just about any small vertical slice of this game, and it'll come out looking and feeling pretty damn great. Whether that be arcade mode, story mode, the various online modes, etc. But versus mode, the true test of any fighting game's quality is, of course, where this game shines. But if you intend to comprehend and experience everything that it has to offer, then FighterZ immediately becomes a different beast entirely. Beware those of you who wish to know what this game's got going on behind the curtain, because the answer is too damn much. Dragon Ball FighterZ, as it turns out, is one of those games that's actually two extremely different games depending on who's playing it, your average user or your completionists. It may not seem that way at first depending on where you start your journey. So for instance, take this game's character trials. They're there to act as a bit of a combat-based puzzle, as well as to demonstrate what each character is capable of and what makes them unique, such as Nappa's Cyberman setups and Ten's tactical ability to sacrifice his only friend. These trials are all goo baby easy, save for each character's final 2 or so combos. So if you're a more casual player, just perusing these trials, they're a nice way to familiarize yourself with the cast. And if you're trying to do it all, then that won't take you too long either. But that's this game just lulling you into lowering your guard, that crafty bastard. Online modes. That's where the really tough stuff lies, right? Achievements that force you to interact with other actual human players. Get this though, FighterZ online achievements aren't even that bad. Most of them merely require playing in 20 or so matches of various online modes. And that's just play, not win. I've come across far more demanding multiplayer achievements in my day. In fact, if this game had tasked me with actually winning those handful of fights, I still would have gotten off light in the grand scheme of things. The worst obligation completionists have when it comes to this game's online multiplayer is a single achievement that tasks them with acquiring 530,000 points, which is essentially raising your score in ranked mode. Time consuming? Without a doubt. But once again, I've encountered far more grueling online achievements. No, if you're looking for where the boogeyman lurks, you can start with one of the most unlikely places, arcade mode. Yeah, you didn't see that one coming, did ya? Arcade mode is exactly what you'd expect, except it's got a neat mechanic where you're either raised or lowered along branching paths based on your performance in battle. Players also receive a letter grade ranking at the end of their run. Gotta shoot for those S rankings, am I right? There are 3 routes to choose from in arcade mode, with each one containing more potential fights than the last. There are also hard mode versions of those original 3 routes, as well as 3 more that are basically the original routes, except with a more varied pool of opponents. So normally I'd say that all that this really calls for is at least 3 trips through arcade mode. 1 for each of the hard routes, 1 for the S ranking. No need to complete the other routes if they're just the exact same thing, just on a lower difficulty and with other opponents, right? Well, that would be the case if it wasn't for this little icon right here. That's where your letter ranking appears when you complete a run through a particular route. And its mere existence absolutely compels me to fill it in. I can't just have blank 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 SSS blank blank blank. I have to fill them in. If there were no icons there at all until you actually completed the route, everything would be gravy. But these indicators of what could be are like crack. Now, because I've got completionist tendencies and because of a seemingly innocuous design decision, my workload in this mode has effectively tripled. It may not seem like a big deal to a lot of you, but I'm willing to bet that a lot of you out there do understand the feelings I'm describing. But this unfortunate design decision, and thus the time I had to spend in this mode, is only the tip of the grindy iceberg, a mere harbinger of the terror to come.
Hey everyone, I want to stop and give a quick shout out and thank you to our sponsor today, G Fuel. For those of you guys who don't know, G Fuel has been a long-term partner of the show. They've been supporting us and we appreciate their support each and every month. G Fuel is a sugar-free supplemental drink that you can put in your water or your milk depending on the flavor. Mix it up, a little kick of caffeine in it. Personally, I use G Fuel for my own supplemental drink stuff because sugar and soda is just like the bane of my existence. And this is a great alternative if you're just trying to get that little caffeine kick with a little sweet taste in there too. Recently, G Fuel just partnered with Edmund McMillan of the Binding of Isaac fame, and now there is a Binding of Isaac flavor that you can pre-order right now, and I am for sure going to get it, despite how creepy or weird the Binding of Isaac may be to some of you out there. And based on you guys at home, you guys actually use my code a ton, which I'm super grateful for. So let's keep the train going. Head over to gfuel.com and use code Completionist on checkout for a discount. Again, that's gfuel.com. Use code Completionist on checkout. Thank you, G Fuel. Thank you to the fans. And now, back to the show.
Dragon Ball FighterZ has a story mode that features a completely original narrative. A shoddy narrative, but at least it's completely original. It involves monochromatic clones of the main characters running amok, while our heroes have their powers sapped by mysterious sources. So Goku and his pals have to supplement their strength by relying on the only one who can help them. You, the player. Yay. The gameplay entails navigating around maps that resemble game boards, with each spot presenting an opportunity for a battle. There's no real game to be had on this board though. You just click and fight. But there is some strategy within story mode. First off, there's level-based character progression. The more you use a character on your team, the buffer they'll get. Unnecessary tasks since your opponents only get stronger over time too. The RPG elements continue with skills, little equipable passive buffs that both your team and the enemy squads can utilize, making story mode's gameplay slightly more customizable and varied. But let's say you're not really into the whole min-maxing thing and you're just in for that sweet, sweet original Dragon Ball narrative content. Well, surprisingly, this game's modes got some stuff that's actually worth seeing. Namely, character interactions you'd probably never witness in any other official Dragon Ball media. Like these little scenes that pop up when you choose to participate in the optional fights that reward you with another character to add to your party. Kind kind of fun to see stuff like the characters debating over whether or not they should rescue Yamcha. There are also brief scenes that are accessed based off of who you've chosen for your active party and who happens to be on the enemy's team. It's genuinely amusing to see Nappa air his grievances over Vegeta, turning him into a clay pigeon that one time, or seeing Cell passively aggressively push adult Gohan's buttons. These little cutscenes are a breath of fresh air when Dragon Ball's usual narrative revolves around characters standing around asking, "Where's Goku?" And in all honesty, these bite-sized character interactions tend to be far more interesting and enjoyable than this mode's main plot, with its clones and lab coat robot girls and blah 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 blah. In all fairness, this was a fun little mode that was a welcome break from the usual Dragon Ball narrative, and the RPG elements provided gameplay that was refreshingly different from the rest of DBFZ's offerings. A single trip through story mode is absolutely worth the price of admission, but I would probably hold story mode in even higher regard if I didn't have to push through it multiple times. Once you beat the first route, which mainly focuses on the heroic characters, a second version focusing on the villains becomes available. But it's not like this route acts as a continuation or anything to the first story, or even a Rashomon-style interpretation of previous events. The second story feels more like a weird alternate universe, suggesting what could have happened instead. But bafflingly, even though this villain arc is incompatible with the heroes, they're still extremely similar, to the point where it feels like you're just playing through the first route all over again. This would have been a great opportunity to provide players with yet another attempt at an original Dragon Ball narrative, and maybe add some new gameplay twists too. Nope, but hey, you do get a third arc to play through, this one focusing on the androids. Oh, and don't forget that hard difficulty versions of all three of these routes exist, bringing the total number of trips through Clone World to 6. Look, this stuff gets old fast, and I don't expect casual players' interest to be held long enough to do it all. But for completionists like myself, we don't have much of a choice, and God, do I wish we did. Completing story mode is where things begin to especially feel nasty for completionists. You see, Dragon Ball FighterZ does an exceptional job at keeping track of everything a player could potentially acquire or encounter in this mode. Everything. All the skills on this list. All the recruitment scenes on this list. Every possible character interaction, they're here too. And as discussed previously, their inclusion here absolutely compels me to catch them all. This isn't the first time this kind of menu design has turned what should have been a relatively reasonable completion experience into a nightmare, but it is one of the most surprising times. I didn't think a fighting game like this would ever take the time to organize stuff like this. The tragedy is that I understand how this is probably the result of someone's best intentions. Indeed, if you're looking to just keep track of stuff you've seen and collected, but don't really care what you're missing, then this itemized list is incredibly helpful. But for those of you who do care what they're missing, then these are marching orders. This list fundamentally changed the way I played through story mode, and not in a good way. On my first time through, I tended to take the paths of least resistance to each map's boss, but coming back through on cleanup duty meant participating in virtually every single fight in order to unlock all of those little cutscenes. And as genuinely enjoyable as these little moments are, they are not worth hunting down in the age of YouTube. Collecting all of the skills further pads out this sad treasure hunt, as they tend to pop up as rewards for various fights, seemingly at random. So if you're trying to complete your collection, you'll be loading up different maps over and over, trying to clock the stragglers you still need. They could have made it so that once you unlock a skill, say defense up level 4 for example, you can apply that one skill 3 times to fill up your team's skill slots. But no, you've got to find all 3 defense up level 4s if you want your tanky team. Once again, for people who are casually perusing this mode, they'll never notice or care. But for people like us, torture. And even after taking hours and hours to fill out that entire list of story mode collectibles, the job was not done, thanks to the existence of the character link cutscenes. Just about every one of the characters you can play as in story mode have a special little clip that's unlocked every time you gain 10 levels with them, all the way up to level 70. Playing through story mode 6 times, hunting down all that stuff, certainly got me to max level with a couple of these guys, but the rest required copious grindage. Sure, this process was helped along by equipping max level EXP acquisition skills, but not nearly enough. So now, because of a few cutscenes that I don't even want to see, and a few lines of grayed out text in a buried menu, I gotta mindlessly mash through battle after battle after battle with the same old bunch of characters hanging out in the back of my party. Completing this mode forced me to play in a way that was very specific in order to knock out what's essentially a checklist, as opposed to getting to express myself through a fighting game. At this point, I desperately wanted to move on, but I could only daydream about something like messing around in versus mode with random ass teams made up of DLC characters. This grinding was the very last thing I would accomplish in story mode, leaving me with a bitter taste in my mouth. I wish I could have left with the memory of Gotenks teasing Nappa about never becoming a Super Saiyan. That stuff was great, but it wasn't meant to be. And the worst part of it all is that grinding in story mode wasn't even close to the worst thing this game had to offer. Just like in Dragon Ball Z, whenever you take down a powerful villain, there is always something far worse and far more powerful just looming on the horizon. And it all goes down right here. This is Dragon Ball FighterZ Lobby, where you, by the way of your little avatar, can bop from station to station, with each providing access to the game's various modes. But what's important about this place is that number in the top right screen. That's Zenny, DBFZ's in-game currency. And for those hoping to complete this bad boy, it's the most important number of all. That's because this game has two achievements concerning this number. One for acquiring 5 million Zenny, and another for 20 million. And in all the dozens and dozens of hours I put into this game, completing everything else this game has to offer, I didn't even come anywhere close hitting the 5 million mark. And make no mistake, this game coughs up Zenny for just about every single activity. When you complete matches, when you complete little in-game challenges. Hell, there were several times I just logged in, entered the lobby, and the game just threw Zenny at me. But it's always a pittance when compared to what you'd need in order to approach that ultimate sum within a reasonable time frame. Running through arcade mode? Not nearly fast enough. Playing online? Please. Equipping Zenny farming skills in story mode? You'll be here forever. After extensive scientific experimentation, online research, and praying to Kami, it seems that the most efficient method for Zenny farming involves the tournament mode. It's an unassuming little option tucked away in a corner of the lobby, where you can fight against the AI under various special conditions. The most optimal of which, for our purposes, would be this one, in which both teams start the fight with minimal health. Doesn't matter that our team could die in one hit because our team is never gonna die. We're just here to do the same quick combo over and over again in order to clear out the other teams as quickly and easy as possible. Why? Because when this little tournament concludes, you are rewarded with 30,000 Zenny. Sounds nice, right? But in reality, 30k is a drop in the bucket on the road to 5 million, let alone 20 million. The hours that I've dumped into this method ended up dwarfing the many hours I've spent completing Dragon Ball FighterZ up to that point. You want to know what completing this game looks like? It looks like this. Hours and hours of this. So yes, this seems to be the best method to obtain these terrible achievements, but my f***ing god, at what price? While the average player can enjoy this genuinely awesome game at their leisure, with varied teams, evolving strategies, and exciting moments, completionists will undoubtedly find themselves locked inside this limbo. But eventually, hour after hour after hour, I finally got the achievement for 5 million Zenny. And then after several more hours, I had a good cry. And sometime after that, I got the 20 million one. Good riddance. So, what the hell is this money even for? And why would you need 20 million of it? Well, the lobby contains a shop where players can buy various things, mostly cosmetic. You can spend your money on alternate in-game announcer voices, new battle music, and straight up level boosts and skills for story mode. Yeah, look, I knew this stuff was there, but I chose to grind it out anyways because for all I knew, this game doesn't keep track of your total acquired Zenny for the achievements, just how much you've currently got in the bank. I chose the rock of grinding in story mode over the hard place of grinding in tournament mode. The vast majority of your Zenny is probably going to be spent on the classic Japanese institution of pseudo-gambling known as gacha. These Z capsules contain all kinds of customization options for your lobby character and your player card, the little screen with all your player info. I can understand someone spending a ton of Zenny trying to RNG their way into a sweet Master Roshi avatar or something like that. But most of the stuff you can spend cash on isn't all that exciting. But we completionists are honor bound, right? To get it all? Well, maybe not, man. Funnily enough, it's with these cosmetic customization options where Dragon Ball FighterZ decides to drop its design philosophy of meticulously keeping track of every little knickknack. Well, that's not quite true either. The game still keeps track of all of your collected avatars and stamps, but it doesn't denote how many more you've yet to obtain. And as far as I can tell, these master lists aren't anywhere in the game, and all of the lists online in my research are conflicting, with many being outdated. The list of avatars just seems to get longer and longer the more Z capsules I buy, but I don't see any light at the end of that tunnel. And this titles page certainly doesn't imply there are lots to be collected, but it doesn't tell me exactly how many either. So I guess I'm drawing a line right here. I can't be sure, but I believe I've gotten as many of these as I can as possible. And I think that's good enough because this game contains even worse things that one could possibly consider as completion criteria. Look at this. Look at this. These are all the medals which keep track of virtually every little thing you could possibly do in Dragon Ball FighterZ. How many times you've ended a match with a super move. How many ranked matches you've played. How many times you've used Majin Buu. And the milestones they mark reach ridiculous levels. There's no world where I should have to use every single character in the game 200 times just to unlock a check mark on a list that's absolutely buried in menus. It would be outrageous to consider this actual completion criteria, at least in my opinion. Hell, I've read plenty of opinions out there that getting the final 20 million Zenny achievement isn't even necessary for true completion. Different strokes for different folks, everyone. After all, for all we know, they're going to continue to release even more content for this game in the future, just like they'll never stop thinking about more pituitary cases from the future or space or the afterlife for Goku to beat up. Look, as I said at the top of this, at a certain point, you've got to know when to draw the line, hang up your orange gi, and say good game. And despite the pain one must endure to complete it, that's exactly what Dragon Ball FighterZ is at the very end of the day. A very good game. These character designs are perfect. The gameplay is exciting and fun. These modes are varied, bound to provide something for everyone. And if you've got friends to play with, this game can last for years, as evidenced by how long it's endured in the competitive scene. Just stay away from anything that looks like a list and keep mashing Super Dash. You'll be just fine. If you're expecting a substantial reward for all the work that completionists could potentially pour into this game, then this is probably your first time around the block, huh? Huge, insane, in-game checklists and satisfying unlockable bonuses are like oil and water. And Dragon Ball FighterZ definitely continues that shameful tradition. Sure, you get rewarded all the time as you naturally play with things like random bursts of Zenny and the odd title here and there. But there's virtually nothing that acknowledges when the player crosses the finish line and has done it all. Nothing for completing all the character trials, nothing for getting all S ranks in arcade mode, nothing for unlocking every single achievement. Oh, but you do get a little star on the story mode title screen every time you finish it, so enjoy your 6 stars, I guess. That being said, I genuinely can't conceive of any rewards that would actually be worth all this trouble. Is there any cosmetic item that would make it all worthwhile? God forbid they lock anything truly substantial, like a character, behind these tasks. I guess this dilemma just reinforces how completing stuff like this just isn't worth it, and highlights, by comparison, just how awesome this game's core experience is. Every single activity I tried felt great in the beginning. It wasn't until I spent hours upon hours in any one particular mode that made my experience begin to change for the worse. I definitely enjoyed my early times learning combos in the trials. I have no regrets about playing through the first arc of the story, which was genuinely fun. And of course, playing with friends never gets old. I may be glad that I'm finally done, or what I consider done, with Dragon Ball FighterZ, but I'm even more glad that I actually tried it.
Dragon Ball FighterZ is sweet on the surface, sour underneath. Thankfully, you only have to go as deep as you would like to. It's a wonderful ride whether you're a fan of the Dragon Ball franchise, fighting games, or just high-quality video games in general. There's technically a lot to do, but even if it provided you with some reward for filling out most of its gargantuan lists, it still wouldn't be worth your time to do so. However, scratching at its surface, by finishing the story one time or playing some matches with friends, this game becomes completely worth it. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finish it.
Finish it!